Is Steve Deace, conservative contributor out of Des Moines,
Yep.
correct? I'm curious, part of why we're here as American Atheists is to appeal to the 56 million atheist voters out there, especially the conservative ones. Why do you feel it's important that conservative atheists get involved in the political race, especially now when it's down to three candidates on the Republican side? Three or four with Kasich.
Well, I think it's important that anybody that cares about the future of their country gets involved, that wants to see the country move off of the slouch towards socialism or statism that we are currently seeing. And one of the chief concerns I have in this race is we're watching values and terms get defined down. And this is always what cults of personality do. This was done for Obama 8 years ago, and it's being done for Donald Trump now. So, for example, what you're seeing is, what exactly is conservatism? What are you trying to conserve, right? And so, what's happening with Donald Trump is he's sort of creating this coalition of people, some of whom are serious conservatives and libertarians, but a lot of them are not. They're just people who are mad. They're French Revolution mad. They want to storm the Bastille and burn it down, and God bless them. I have many of those same days myself. But what is the end game when the tantrum is exhausted, when you have vented? I mean, what is the constructive end game when we're finished with this? And one of the concerns I have with the coalition that Trump is building is it seems as if we're now redefining conservatism to be, well, I'm just some white nationalist, I'm mad that minorities are dominating now, and I want, the white guy's going to be the minority now, and I want us to be back in control, like I'm trying to conserve a cultural heritage or some kind of a homeland. I'm not interested in that. For me, and maybe this is where we might find some common ground, because I'm a Christian. I wear I got Jesus on my sleeve, my face, all over. I got him in my heart, okay, and I'm happy to talk to you about that till the cows come home. But we have to agree at some point. Even Ayn Rand, who was an atheist, and she hated people like me. Even Ayn Rand agreed. Some things have to be objectively true.
Sure.
Some things have to be. Some truth is at least revealed in nature. There must be some order to the chaos, right?
Sure.
So, and the problem with Trump is he's creating a coalition of chaos. Well, we just want to have our megalomaniac get in there and get back at what the Obama megalomaniac did to us. We want our own version of the Cloward-Piven plan. What we're looking for is conserving objective truths in nature. Now, we may disagree what the origin of those truths are. I think the origin of those truths are revealed in nature by divine inspiration. You may think they are just a result of naturalistic occurrences. But we all would agree that there are some things in nature that are revealed to be objectively true, right? Gravity is true. Whether you want to believe you have the right to fly or not, gravity is objectively true. So here's an objective truth. When government removes itself from the shackles of what nature says are its appointed jurisdictions and attempts to adjudicate things and prosecute things or play the role of social justice maven outside of those appointed boundaries, tyranny and zany hijinks always ensue. And that's what's happening to our way of life now. We have to return to what are the objective markers. We are trying to conserve what are those objective markers. What are those objective markers? A rule of law, limited government, so that a constitution limits the role of government, not the freedom of the individual. And then, of course, we're eventually, folks like you and me, are going to have an argument about, well, who determines or what determines what are those objective markers? Now, I believe they are the laws of nature and nature's God. But what cannot be argued is that those markers exist. And if we don't return to those boundaries, then we're going to be the next great civilization to join the scrap heap to history.
If you don't mind me adding on that, with the markers, like I had said before, there were a lot of conservative atheists, especially young conservative atheists, that approached our table and said, you know what, I'm a conservative, I really love conservative values and all the markers, I just don't believe in God. How can the conservative movement reconcile that, especially when they're trying to win elections at the local level, the state level, the federal level? Do we turn them away, or do we try to embrace them despite the differences in beliefs?
I'm a believer that you don't have to agree with me on everything. If you see enough in me, I'm not going to change my principles. Mm-hmm. Right? I'm not going to change my theistic view for a single voter. And whether they disagree with me on what the source of that theistic view, whether they would be a Muslim or a Hindu, or whether they would disagree with me that there is a source for a theistic view at all, whether they be an atheist, I'm not going to change that viewpoint, because it's actually my theistic view based in a Judeo-Christian tradition that lends me to be a conservative in the first place.
So do you feel you cannot be as conservative unless you...
Well, let me finish what I was going to say.
Okay, sure.
On the other hand, if you see what the result of my belief system is, if you think the result of my belief system makes a better way of life for you, then we don't necessarily have to agree on everything. We don't have to go to the same church. We don't have to go to church at all. If you agree that, again, in nature there exist objective things that when human beings live by these objective truths, they are blessed, and when they are not, or when they don't, then they are not. And so I think that's really what and I'm happy to sit down with anybody that doesn't believe in God. I'll talk to you all night long about that, because to me the challenge isn't on my end. If you're trying to say I'm an atheist conservatism, or I'm an atheist conservative, then the challenge is actually on your end. You're the one that has to answer, therefore, what am I trying to conserve? Why am I trying to conserve these traditions, these values? What is the source of these traditions and these values? Where do they come from? It's much easier to be an atheist progressive and to simply say, well, since I don't believe that a universe has a beginning and therefore a creator that's not accountable to anything, then we can just progress and evolve until the cows come home on any subject that we want. But if you don't agree with me, though, on the source of your conservatism, but you do agree with me on what the end result is, then I'm happy to work with you on any causes where we have agreement, and then on the causes where we don't, we won't. It's
Sure.
just that simple.
If you don't mind me asking kind of a gotcha question, I asked Mike Huckabee this, I asked Bob Vanderplatz this. Would you rather support a true atheist candidate for any position in government, or someone that is considered quote-unquote a phony or a fake Christian? One that kind of panders a little bit, doesn't understand it, maybe in the recent in the recent situation with the 2 Corinthians versus the 2nd Corinthians, which way would you rather lean?
I don't believe there's any such thing as a phony Christian.
Okay.
I think that if you don't have an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, and to have one, you have to have repented of your sins. You have to have asked Him for forgiveness. Donald Trump says he has not asked God for forgiveness. He's not a Christian by his own admission. You got to know God's word. You have to you have to communicate with God. You have to seek. Maybe you're Catholic and you seek that relationship through the sacraments. Maybe you're Protestant and you seek that relationship through sola scriptura. Maybe you're a hybrid. But that relationship, and that's the same in a human relationship. If you're married, but you don't seek constant communion and community with your spouse, is that relationship really sincere? Will it last very long? No, it will not. And that's the same thing when you seek to have a relationship with God. So there's no such thing as a phony Christian. Here's what I would say to an atheist running for office who came to me and said, I don't agree with your theistic worldview, but I agree with you on what the roles of government ought to be. And this is and I would answer your question with this question. Our system of government, what sets us apart from every other experiment in human freedom, is the notion of unalienable rights. The idea that rights are pre-existent in nature, the laws of nature and nature's God that Jefferson wrote about. So you have to convince me as a voter, you have to convince me that even though you don't believe in God, you are still willing to defend my God-given rights. And so I always believe that the impetus to make the case is always on the candidate, because he's the one applying for the job, whether he's a Christian or some form of secular progressive, Republican, Democrat, what have you. When you're applying for the job, the burden of proof is always on you. We're the voters, we're the bosses, we're the ones doing the job interview. So it's up to you then as an atheist to convince me that even though you don't believe in God, you're actually willing to protect my God-given rights. And I think that's a case that an atheist candidate would have to make.
Sure. You just made me think of one last one. So
Sure.
Sorry. Is Donald Trump an atheist?
Donald
Parading
Trump, as I've written before, Donald Trump is a functional atheist. And there's a lot of people in America who believe they have a theistic worldview, but they are functional atheists as well. I would say Barack Obama is a functional atheist. Hillary Clinton's a functional atheist. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, in many respects, in every respect, I have far more intellectual respect for someone such as yourself that has an atheist viewpoint and has sort of created a systematic epistemology to try and be consistent in that belief. than someone who says, I have a theistic worldview, but then I'm going to pick and choose the times I'm going to activate that, I'm going to engage that, I'm going to bring God down to my level. Frankly, if you're a human being who says, I seek rational, consistent thought, and that rational, consistent thought makes me either doubt that God exists or that he doesn't exist, the great irony of this is, by your willingness, made in the image of God, whether you recognize it or not, by your willingness to seek rational order to your own thought process in the universe, you're actually closer to a theistic worldview than is the person who says, I'm going to use God when it suits me. God is a vending machine. And this is where you and me as an atheist would agree. Run as far away from those people as you can, reject them in hand, and rebuke them as harshly as you can, and I will stand in solidarity with you on that point.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.